This is the 32nd induction ceremony of the Alabama Academy of Honor. We're honored to have you here. Our invocation will be given by Dr. Ira Myers.
Let us pray. O God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come. You have ordained government. You have created us. You provide for us and you sustain us. We thank you for your protection. We thank you for giving us the freedom of this fine land of America. We thank you for our state and for all of its provision. We thank you, Father, for the leadership that we have and for the opportunities that we have to serve the people of this fine state and nation. It's a real privilege, Father, to talk about the things that will be honored today, how they have rendered service to mankind. Strengthen us that we might be good citizens, that we might be faithful to you, that we would appreciate the things that you provide because you are the giver of all good and perfect gifts. Thank you once again and praise your name, for it's in your holy name that we pray. Amen.
I'm going to say a few words later about Governor Riley, but what I will say now is this. Governor Riley, we are honored and happy to have you here. Where are you? All right. Please come up and welcome us.
Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are surrounded by some of the most significant Alabamians in our history. These are the people who make the great state of Alabama so great. Men and women who have gone the extra mile and given a little more of themselves in order to achieve success and to help others to do the same. That's why I'm honored to have an opportunity to welcome the newest members of the Alabama Academy of Honor. The Alabama Academy of Honor is an elite group of those who have made great contributions to our society in the areas of business, science, diplomacy, education, public service, and others too numerous to mention. And this year's list of inductees certainly upholds the traditions of the Academy. Today we welcome Bill Cabaniss, Catherine Randall, Hall Thompson, Cameron Vowell, and Michael Warren Jr. as the newest members of the Alabama Academy of Honor. Each one of you deserve the honor about to be bestowed upon you. Your induction strengthens the Academy and continues the long line of extraordinary Alabamians that are members of this group. I'm confident each of you will maintain the high standards of those who have come before and will assure that the future generations of Alabamians continue their admiration and their respect for the Academy. I also want to thank Academy Chairman Tom Carruthers, Dr. Ed Bridges and his staff at the Department of Archives and History for their hard work and their dedication to the Academy and also for today's events. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the people of the great state of Alabama, welcome to your state capital, and thank you for joining us today and sharing with us the Alabama Academy of Honor induction ceremony.
Let me recognize some of the people we have here today. We have Governor Riley, Governor Patterson, Governor Hunt, Seth Hammett, Speaker of the House, Nancy Worley, our Secretary of State, Kay Ivey, our Treasurer, Ed Bridges, the head of the Archives. I kept you at the end, Lucy. We have Lucy Baxley, our great Lieutenant Governor. So let's recognize these people. I want to recognize the members of the Academy who are here now. And I'll just read their names, and then at the end we can recognize them. When I read your name, if you'll stand, we have a splendid group. Tom Bartlett from Portland, Oregon. Claude Bennett. Tom Bradford, Jr. Is Betty Bryce here? All right, I'd hope Betty would be here, standing in for her husband. Harry Brock, David Bronner, Wally Bunn, John Cadell. John is the Dean of the Alabama Bar. Austin Callahan. I guess he's the Dean of the eye doctors of this state. Mason Davis. Holly Delchamps, Gary Neal Drummond, Marvin Engel, Emery Fulmar, Conrad Fowler. I hope Judge Fowler's here. John Godbold, Judge Godbold. Elma Harris, James A. Head Sr. Where is Mr. Head? Mr. Head, in 2 months, will be the Academy's centenarian. Basil Hershowitz, Sandrell Hewlett, Dr. Tom James, Nell Harper Lee, Stanley Mackin, Scotty McCallum, Mayor McCallum, Joe McCorkadale, Dr. Myers. Dr. Myers is also a member of our executive committee. Hey, is the Chief Justice here? He said he would be here. We'll hold him in contempt. Sabert Oglesby, Dr. Jim Pittman, Malcolm Patera. The Chancellor spoke to us last year, and this year his talk will be given by one of his members of his faculty. Van Ritchie, Yetta Sanford, Herb Sklenar, Larry Striplin, Lee Steislinger, Joab Thomas, Judge Bo Torbert, Jack Warner. Is Jack here? I'm afraid to hold Jack in contempt. Bobby Wheel, Jim Wilson, Catherine Tucker Wyndham, Cordell Wynn. Have I missed everyone? Anyone? Well, sir. Brandy, sorry. Thank you for coming over from Anniston. Thank you. Please recognize these people. This past year, we lost 4 of our members, all very distinguished. Ben Gilmer was head of AT&T. I think he was the first Southerner to become head of that then huge organization. And he is responsible for maybe the most famous, the most memorable series of numbers any of us have ever heard. And 911, he gave us 911. Crawford Johnson. Crawford there was no one who was more highly respected in the business world. He stood for integrity, for running a very sound ship. He was on every board that any board could get him for. When I moved to Birmingham in 1955, you mentioned Crawford and you mentioned total integrity. John Kirkland came to UAB, and part of that great group of doctors and administrators built UAB into the giant it is today. It's responsible for Birmingham being there. He came as head of the Department of Cardiology, and in a very short time, UAB was ranked among the very top in that field of work. Tom Murrah, Admiral Tom Murrah, he was the Joint Chief of Staff, Chief of the Joint Chiefs. He did many other things. He fought in wars. He was a strong person. Someone referred to him as gruff, which he was, spoke his mind, and was a great asset again to this state and to the things that we have in this state. We have two representatives. We have Kate Nielsen over there. Kate, would you stand? Kate is one of the great daughters of Crawford Johnson. Kate Nielsen is, thank you, Kate, for being here very much. Tom Murrah is represented by his brother. Where am I? All right, okay. All right. And you have your two sons. And where are they? All right, you stand up. Thank you all very much for being here, Mac, all of you. Thank you. Well, and we will miss these great people, great people. In December, a judicial job had to be filled. The qualifications for that job were, among other things, courage, good judgment, a respect and an understanding of the rule of law, and good sense. Governor Riley demonstrated his own good sense and good judgment in asking John Patterson to fill that job. The job, of course, was to be acting Chief Justice of the special Supreme Court that had been assembled to handle the Judge Moore matter. Judge Patterson has continued to handle that very tough job with dignity, with everything that you would expect and hope from a really good judge. We are honored that he will give the address on behalf of the members. So please let us welcome Governor, Judge, Chief Justice John Patterson.
Tom, I'd like to meet that fellow you're talking about. Governor Riley, Governor Hunt, distinguished public officials, members of the Academy of Honor, and particularly the 5 new members that we're going to induct today, I extend a warm welcome to all of you on behalf of the Academy of Honor. I hope that when I am presented here on my 100th birthday that I'll get the amount of applause that Mr. Head got. That's absolutely great. I had a special guest here one time at a joint session. It was Floyd Mann's granddaddy, who was 101, and I introduced him to the joint session of the legislature, and he got a 5-minute standing ovation. It's great to be 100, and I hope I make it myself. The Academy of Honor idea came from Dr. Emmett Carmichael of the University of Alabama in Birmingham. Dr. Carmichael was professor and chair of the Department of Biochemistry at the University in Birmingham. It was his idea, and he got the legislative delegation from Jefferson County and Governor Wallace to create, get the statute passed and create the Academy of Honor in 1965. It took a little effort to get it going, though, and it wasn't until 1969, when Governor Brewer was governor, that he appointed a committee of prominent Alabamians to select the first class of 10 people to start the Academy of Honor. The law provided that all governors would automatically be members of the Academy of Honor by operation of law. George Wallace said to me one time, said, "John, if it hadn't been for making the governors members by law, you and I'd have never made it." And that's probably right. So if you can't make it any other way, you can get elected governor. And I don't think that that's an easy task either. The law also limits us to taking in only 10 a year. And once we get to 100, you can only replace vacancies. And that's what we are doing here today. We are inducting 5 new members to take the place of 5 of our members who have passed away since the last time we met. This committee was chaired by Dr. Carmichael to select the first 10. And on that committee was Chief Justice Heflin, later Senator Heflin, and Dr. Harry Philpott of Auburn. The first class, the first 10, and then 4 governors, 4 living governors. There was 14 of us. Red Blunt was the first person inducted into the Academy of Honor. And Red died just recently. A great man. The second person inducted was Governor Albert Brewer. I'm sorry that Governor Brewer is not here today. He and I are the only 2 survivors of the first class of 14 members. Albert and I have proven, and I think Governor Hunt too, have proven that you can be governor and still have a productive life after you leave the governor's office. Albert is a great fellow. Barrett Bryant was in that group, and Big Jim Folsom, and Dr. Gaston, and Senator Hill, and Sparkman, Dr. Rose, Dr. Vernon Von Braun, George Wallace. They were all acquaintances of mine. Some were close friends of mine. I worked with nearly all of them on various projects. And I'd like to mention a couple of them. In 1960, the last year of the Eisenhower administration, President Eisenhower came down to Huntsville, and we had a groundbreaking ceremony to build the George C. Marshall Space Flight Center at Huntsville, which was a tremendous thing. And this was where the research was going to be carried on to send us into space and ultimately to the moon. And this thing got underway. And then in June of the following year, 1961, Dr. Vernon von Braun, a member of the Academy of Honor, and Dr. Rose, also a member, came to see me and said, we're going to lose the Marshall Space Flight Center if we can't provide for a higher education institution in Huntsville where the young scientists who come to work on the space project will be able to further their education while they're there and get higher and enhance their degrees while they're there. And if we can't provide that, we're going to lose it. They're going to take it somewhere else. So we got busy and we got the legislation introduced. I think Mr. Joe McCorkindale, who's here today, was in the legislature at that time. And we, of course, had trouble finding the money. But anyway, we got the legislation on the calendar. And then it wasn't unanimous by any means. There were some other universities in the state that wasn't particularly keen on the University of Alabama having a branch in Huntsville. And Alabama A&M people, they weren't keen on it too, either. But anyway, we decided to have a joint session of the legislature and get Dr. Vernon von Braun, a tremendous fellow, get him to come down here and address a joint session and tell the legislature what the problem was. Well, he came down, he made a great speech to the legislature. It was tremendous. And then we adjourned and went out to the governor's mansion where I arranged for a very fine luncheon for all the members of the legislature and our guests and our party. And I had discovered that Dr. von Braun's favorite wine was Lancer's Rosé, a Portuguese wine that comes in an earthen crock. It's good, it's all right. Emory doesn't sell that in the state liquor store. Well, we laid in a substantial supply of it at the mansion, and the legislators and our guests drank every bit of it for lunch. They went back down to the Capitol here and went back in session, and promptly, by unanimous vote, passed the legislation. Now, Dr. von Braun deserves a lot of credit for the University of Alabama at Huntsville, because this was the birth of it. Dr. Rose deserves a lot of credit too. But you can't discount what Lancer's Rosé did for it either. Before I took office, after I was elected, I was Attorney General for about 6 months. And I spent that time organizing the legislature and getting my program together and working with people. And I got a call from Dr. Drawn, president of Auburn University. He said, I want you to come over and visit me and let me give you a tour of the campus. And I agreed. He said, I want you to meet me in front of the chemistry building at 9 o'clock on a certain morning. So I went over there, and I didn't know why, but where we were meeting there, but we met, and I got out of my car, and we stood there in front of the chemistry building, and Dr. Drawn said, you see that building across the street? And I said, yes. He said, that's the Auburn Library. And it was a very small thing, surrounded by a bunch of Quonset huts. They had a lot of the Auburn Library in Quonset huts. He said, that's the poorest library in the country for a major institution. And I want you to promise me that while you're governor, that you and I are going to build a new Auburn Library. Well, I had no idea how we were going to do it, but I said, yes, sir, we will certainly do it. Of course, I wasn't even in office yet. Had no idea how we were going to do it. But anyway, I promised him. Well, Chief Justice Torbett was in the legislature then on the Ways and Means Committee, and he remembers that we called a special session for education, and we got a $100 million bond issue passed for school construction. And we got all those Auburn legislators, and particularly those over in Lee County and around there, to support this bond issue in the legislature. And the Auburn Project Library was to come right off the top. And we built it. We built the library during our administration. Now, I have learned that if you're going to build a major building or a bridge across a major river, from the time of the inception or the idea to do it until the time you cut the ribbon, it takes 5 years. So the governor who starts the thing and gets the money up and builds it, he won't be in office long enough unless he got reelected to cut the ribbon. And so anyway, the library was completed about 6 months after I went out of office. And I was invited over to the ribbon cutting. And we had a big stage there, and I had a seat on the back row. And George Wallace was on the front row with his folks, and he claimed full credit for it. Now, I didn't get mad because I understand the way the game is played. And, but anyway, when the meeting broke up, Dr. Drawn said to me, "Stop by my house on your way out of town." So I did, and I went by Dr. Drawn's, where the president lived, a beautiful home. And he said, "Come on back in the den." Went back in the den, and he come out with a bottle of 15-year-old Old Overholt rye whiskey. Now that's a rare kind of whiskey. I don't believe they stock that in the state stores either. He said, "Have a drink with me." I said, "All right." He said, "I want to drink to the library." We did it. So we had a little drink. Then he said, "Well, let's have another one." So I said, "All right." So we had another. Then he put the stopper back in it, and he said, "I'm going to save the rest of this, and I'm going to drink it on the night after the Auburn-Alabama football game." Not all of my association with these people worked out as well. I became governor in 1959, the first year that Bear Bryant came back to Alabama. Now, Bear was in this first group of new members. He called me up one day and said, "Governor, I want you to do me a favor." And I said, "Well, yes, sir. What is it?" Now, I hadn't learned up to that time not to say yes, to say yes before you find out what it was he wanted. He said, "Tonight at 8 o'clock, I'm going to be in a living room of a family in Piedmont, Alabama. And I'm going to be talking to the mother and father and their son I want him to come to Alabama, that son, to come to Alabama. He's the best tackle prospect I have ever seen. And at 8 o'clock, I want you to call this number, and I want you to talk to them and talk to this boy and encourage them to take up my proposition." Well, without thinking, I said I would do it. And so that night I did, and I talked to the boy, and I talked to his parents. Well, he went to Auburn. And when he got down there, he told Shug Jordan, and it got in the paper. And for several weeks, I got hundreds of letters just giving me the devil about that. One fella wanted an appointment to come down here to whip me. Governor Riley, I don't recommend that kind of thing. And I never did that again. I want you to know it. One of the great men in the first group was Senator Lister Hill. Oh, he was a great guy. he and I stumped the state for the Kennedy Johnson ticket, and to go around over Alabama and speak with Senator Hill in country schoolhouses and courthouses was a great experience. Senator Hill was selected in the first group to speak for the new group on behalf of all of them, and thanking the committee for electing the new group. And Senator Hill got up to make this talk. He said he had done a lot of research, and he found a little something interesting and humorous about every one of us 13 people. And so he started out, and it was very interesting. And he saved George Wallace till the last. And when he got down to George Wallace, here's what he said. He said, "And what can we say about the little judge?" And he waited, and he waited, and the audience leaned forward, and he sat down. I looked at George, and he was perplexed, to say the least. And you know, it could have been the highest compliment. It also could have been something else. We'll never know. The purpose of our organization is to honor living Alabamians whose accomplishments or service have greatly benefited the state and its people, or something that has reflected great credit upon the state. Dr. Alston Callahan wrote a letter to me about 4 or 5 years ago, and here's how Dr. Callahan, he's here, he's a member of the Academy of Honor. Here's how he described it: 100 living personalities who have achieved great things for the health, comfort, and enjoyment of life, not only for those of our state, but also for all those who live on our planet. When I read that, I immediately think of Dr. John Kirkland, the great man who has helped people all over the world. Today, we honor 5 splendid Alabamians, and they meet the requirements for membership in full measure, and we are going to, in a few minutes, to induct them into the Academy of Honor. They will fill the vacancies left by the following people: Dr. S. Richardson Hill, Crawford Johnson III, Admiral Thomas H. Murrah, Ben Gilmer, and Dr. John Kirkland. Congratulations to you new members, and we are honored to have you in the Academy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Judge, you mentioned, Judge Patterson, you mentioned that after you've been governor, people went off for a productive life. And are you really panning for gold now?
No way, I don't recommend that. That's as hard as bookwood.
Right. Our citations will be read by Judge C.C. Botorgard. He is a member of the Academy, a member of our executive committee. He is one of the state's really superb judicial giants. Judge Torgard.
Thank you very much, Mr. Carruthers, and I must say on behalf of myself as a member of this academy that I've learned an awful lot today, unlike the usual by Governor John Patterson. A lot of those stories I didn't know anything about, and it was absolutely delightful. It is my privilege to now read the citations for each of the 5 new inductees, and after I finish each citation, that person will come forward and receive his certificate. The first citation: for having built a very successful business and for having being a long-time leader in Alabama's business community. For more than a decade of public service in the Alabama legislature, where he first served as a member of the House of Representatives before being elected to the state Senate, where he served 2 terms. For having served on the boards of directors of several major publicly held companies, including AmSouth Bank, Birmingham Steel Corporation, the Southern Company, and for his continued service on the board of Protective Life Insurance Company. For his efforts to improve the quality of life for others by serving on the boards of A+, King's Ranch, and the Boy Scouts, and for having served as board chairman of the Junior Achievement of Jefferson County. For having been a recipient of Rotary's Community Service Award for his leadership in charitable campaigns, including the United Way, and for service as past chairman of the Metropolitan Development Board, for having been sworn in as United States Ambassador to the Czech Republic by Secretary of State Colin Powell in Washington, D.C. on December 9, 2003. For his long and successful careers in business, public service, community affairs, and his new career in international relations, William J. Cabaniss had been elected to the Alabama Academy of Honor. I'll have to digress just 1 minute because Bill Cabaniss and I have talked about this very briefly. We served together in the legislature, and later on, while he continued his service in the state Senate, I was on the bench as Chief Justice and was always calling on the senators for money. If Drayton Neighbors were here, he would appreciate this story. And we went round and round thinking about that library down at Auburn. In those years, I was trying to buttonhole my friend Bill Cabaniss, and we were friends then, we are friends now, but he wouldn't vote in my favor. Now, it's different today than it was in those days, and that is we remained our good, close friends all this period of time, and I'm very happy to continue in that relationship. Our next citation that I would read is for having served his country in the Pacific Theater in the United States Army Air Corps during World War II, for having built the Alabama dealership for Caterpillar Tractor into one of the most successful such dealerships in the United States, and for having been one of Alabama's foremost business leaders for almost a half a century. For bringing national and international recognition to the state with the development of the world-class Shoal Creek Golf Course. For having served many corporate boards, including AmSouth Bank, South Central Bell, Bell South Telecommunications, Protective Life Corporation, and Alabama Byproducts Corporation. for his long record of philanthropy and service, including continued leadership on the board of the Crippled Children Foundation, for having served as a past director of the Birmingham Chamber of Commerce, Associated Industries of Alabama, and the State Chamber of Commerce, for having been awarded an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, and an honorary Doctor of Humanities degree from Samford University, and for having received the Algernon Sidney Sullivan Award from Judson College, for a lifetime of business achievement, for his generous philanthropy, and for his efforts to bring positive recognition to the state of Alabama, Hall Thompson has been elected to the Alabama Academy of Honor. I'm not going to have a postscript on every one of these citations, but Hall Thompson, one of his best friends and one of my best friends was the same person, and he was O.D. Alterbrook of Lafayette, Alabama, who was a longtime judge of probate and county commissioner up there. So there's all sort of connection in a small state like the state of Alabama. My next citation is for having earned a bachelor's degree from Hollins College, a master's degree in environmental science from the University of Texas in Dallas, and a PhD in biochemistry from the University of Alabama at Birmingham, for her long and distinguished record of leadership and concern for our environment, which has included appointments by 3 governors to serve on the Alabama Air Pollution Control Commission and its successor, the Alabama Environmental Management Commission, where she served for 14 years, and for leadership in a variety of other voluntary organizations on behalf of environmental concerns, for her direct and sustained involvement in a number of nonprofit groups which encourage philanthropy, including the Women's Fund and the Community Foundation of Greater Birmingham, for helping found the Alabama Women's Initiative, a group formed to promote the advancement of women in leadership in Alabama, and the Alabama Solution, a women's political action committee, for her more recent work in the field of geriatrics, and for serving on the board of counselors of the Center for Aging at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, for carrying on a family tradition of, quote, giving back to the community, and for giving her time, her talents, and her leadership and management skills in a wide range of efforts to improve our state. Cameron Vowell has been elected to the Alabama Academy of Honor. Carol? I'm going to violate the rule I just announced by saying that I could have said, and for being the husband of a distinguished jurist and presiding judge of the Circuit Court of Birmingham, her husband, Judge Vowell. Next citation, for having graduated from Auburn University and from Duke University School of Law, for having practiced law at the firm of Bradley, Arant, Rose and White, and for having joined Energen Corporation in 1983 where he has served as president of Alabama Gas Corporation and then as chairman and CEO of Induction Corporation, for having provided the leadership that has helped make Induction one of the best 100 companies to work for in America, the largest developer of coal bed methane in Alabama's Black Warrior Basin, and one of the top 20 producers of oil and natural gas in the United States, for having served as the chairman of the Southern Gas Association and the American Gas Association, for his outstanding leadership in a variety of educational, civic, and cultural organizations, including service as chairman of the Business Council of Alabama, the United Way, Children's Hospital, Leadership Alabama, the Metropolitan Development Board, the Alabama Symphony, the Birmingham Area American Heart Association, the Children and Women's Health System Joint Venture, and service as a board member of even the larger number of similar organizations, for public service and educational leadership in Alabama, ranging from a term on the Mountain Brook School Board to membership on the Birmingham Board of Birmingham Southern College and the 1990 Alabama Education Study Commission, and for serving as chairman of the Alabama Commission on School Performance and Accountability, for outstanding contributions in his state in business, in public affairs, in education, and in community service. Michael Warren has been elected a member of the Alabama Academy of Arts. He said, please don't say anything about me. Broken too many promises. The next citation I read is kind of a favorite one of mine too. For having earned a bachelor's, 2 master's, and a PhD degrees from the University of Alabama, for her 26 years directing the University of Alabama's computer-based honors program, a program widely acclaimed as one of the most successful undergraduate honors programs in the nation, for her record of education leadership in the state and in the nation, including service as national president of Mortar Board, as president of the Alabama Association of Women Deans, and as a board member of the National Collegiate Honors Council, for her sustained and wide-ranging service in the state and local civic and cultural endeavors, including 10 years at the helm of Alabama's Girls State, as president of the Tuscaloosa Boys and Girls Clubs, the West Alabama chapter of the American Red Cross, and the Tuscaloosa Voluntary Action Center, and service on such board as the Alabama Women's Hall of Fame, the American Village, the Alabama Archives and History Foundation, the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, Focus on Senior Citizens, and the Alex de Tocqueville Society, for a distinguished record of leadership in education and for sustained and unstinting contributions to her state in social, civic, and cultural service, Catherine J. Randall had been elected to the Alabama Academy of Arts.
Last year, Mac Patera spoke of big thinkers. Like many business visionaries, my beloved Pettus was a big thinker and sometimes would not worry with details. He would occasionally be carried away in describing a situation, and when corrected on a particular exaggeration, a twinkle would appear in his eye, and he would say, "That's not correct. That's not incorrect. I'm just telling the truth in advance." Although my nominators were similarly incorrect and unconcerned with accurate details in their nominations of me for the Alabama Academy of Honor, I just hope so much that I can live my days ahead so that it can be said that they at least told the truth in advance. Perhaps the other members of the class of 2004, on whose behalf I so proudly speak today, felt a less justified but similar feeling of unworthiness when the invitation letter came. The 95 others of you also may have experienced such a feeling at some point. In like fashion, in 1924, the delegates to the Democratic National Convention might have wondered at the accuracy of the claim made by the chairman of the Alabama delegation. As the story was told by my father-in-law, Chair W.W. Brandon was a man small of stature but huge of voice. For each of the 104 roll calls, he would stand on his chair and cast each ballot in his booming voice on behalf of the great state of Alabama. Perhaps some of the delegates from the North or the Midwest or the West, in their ignorance of Alabama, wondered, great state of Alabama? Isn't Alabama the poorest state in the nation? Haven't we heard of the vast inequities in that society? Divisiveness, discrimination, racism, regressive tax structure. Well, in fact, the devastation of the Civil War had rendered scarcity, from which Alabama still had not recovered in 1924. Historically, scarcity almost always breeds selfishness in order to survive. Most Southerners had responded to poverty by holding on desperately to what little they had, hands clenched, arms held on tightly for fear of losing what little remained. As a consequence, those with absolutely nothing had no chance to share in America's promise of opportunity. They were mired in a poverty that dragged down the prosperity, the greatness of the entire state. We who love this state as passionately as W.W. Brandon did know that he told the truth. This is the great state of Alabama, but we also acknowledge that in a sense, he was telling the truth in advance. Our history of scarcity seems to paralyze us still from making the changes necessary to claim on behalf of every Alabamian all the greatness that Alabama can be. Perhaps we need to follow the leadership example of a fearless young Alabamian and open our hands to reach out to the least of these our brethren so that we can fulfill the promise of our greatness. Because of fear, this young woman's hometown had marginalized, deprived, and ignored a different young man named Arthur Boo Radley. But Mary Louise Finch, known to billions as Scout in America's favorite 20th century novel, To Kill a Mockingbird, put aside her fear in this powerful metaphor on leadership. Scout says, "I led Boo through my house to the front porch, where his uneasy steps halted. He was still holding my hand and gave no sign of letting me go. 'Will you take me home?' He almost whispered it in the voice of a child afraid of the dark. I put my foot on the top step and stopped. I would take him by the hand and lead him through our house, but I would never lead him home. Mr. Arthur, bend your arm down here like that. That's right, sir. I slipped my hand into the crook of his arm. He had to stoop a little to accommodate me, but if my neighbor, Miss Stephanie Crawford, was watching from her upstairs window, she would see Arthur Radley escorting me down the sidewalk, as any proper gentleman would do. As the illustrious and incomparable Hall Thompson pointed out as we collaborated on these remarks, Governor Bob Riley is providing a mechanism based on this metaphor. The Black Belt Action Commission is trying to bring greatness to Alabama's Black Belt, but the commission is not sending wealthy Alabama into poor Alabama to fix it, to lead it by the hand home to greatness. The commission is asking you and me and all of us to walk arm in arm in dignity together into the greatness that the Black Belt and therefore the state of Alabama can be. The class of '04 pledges to follow the example of Scout Finch, to walk home together, leading by respecting the dignity of every human being and working together into the full truth told in advance for so long, into the great state of Alabama, much greener and cleaner because of the tireless work of Cameron Vowell, much brighter and stronger because of the legendary civic leadership of Mike Warren and Hall Thompson and our ambassador, Bill Cabaniss. We accept this honor as a challenge to make of our lives the truth in advance that you told us today, to rise to the expectations of this hallowed academy which John Patterson created and Tom Carruthers so masterfully leads. And we pledge to use this honor to renew our commitment as a new beginning in our lives and to add luster to this academy and to our great state of Alabama. Praise God from whom all blessings flow, including our great state. The five of us say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now how blessed we are that Alabama's own Bill Cabaniss will bring us greetings from the Czech Republic. Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you, Kathy. Kathy, thank you so much for representing our class so beautifully. Governor Riley, Lieutenant Governor Baxley, Governor Patterson, Governor Hunt, and distinguished members of the Academy and visitors. It's truly an honor, as Kathy said, for me to be included in this group of five. But before I bring you greetings from Prague, I'd like to share two short stories because one of my predecessors, Judge Bo Torbert, did the same. The first story I'd like to mention concerns ex-Speaker of the House, Joe McCorkindale. Joe, where are you? When I reported for duty to the Alabama legislature in 1979, Speaker McCorkindale sat in that big chair behind me. I was relegated, along with the entire Jefferson County delegation, to seats in the back of the room. There was an incline with row after row after row, and the Jefferson County delegation was on the very back row in the left corner, and I had the next to last seat in the left corner. Now, Joe, I don't know whether you were responsible for the seating committee or not, but it was a tough way to get started in this body. Judge Bo Torbert, you told a story on me
And as Paul Harvey says, I'm going to tell the rest of the story. And it's going to explain to all of you the high esteem Alabama Chief Justices hold the legislators. Judge Torbett was in the hospital at UAB, and he placed a call to me one day when a $40 million bond issue was being discussed for the building of a new Supreme Court building in Montgomery. And he said, Senator Cabaniss, I hope you will be so inclined to vote for this $40 million bond issue. My lobbyist tells me you have some trouble with it. I said, yes, Judge, I do, and you don't need to be calling me from the hospital bed at UAB and worrying yourself about this. He said, well, Senator Cabaniss, I'd love to talk to you about it when I get back down to Montgomery. I said, that'd be fine, Judge. He came back down in a couple of weeks, and he had found out that I was not inclined to vote for the bond issue, and he saw me in the halls outside, and he said, Cabaniss, I want you to understand why we need this money and why we need this new Supreme Court building. After I voted against it, he saw me in the hall one day and he said, hey, you. It went from senator to Cabaniss to hey, you in about 3 weeks. The rest of the story, Judge. True story, but we are still friends, aren't we? When I say hello from Prague, Czech Republic, I mean it because it's so much fun being back in Alabama and being back in Birmingham with family and friends. Catherine and I have been there for a little over 7 months now, and it certainly has been a challenging and exciting 7 months that have gone by so rapidly. During the first 2 weeks, now this is not typical by any means, but during the first 2 weeks of my arrival on January the 9th, I flew to Baghdad with the Czech foreign minister, Cyril Svoboda, to try to help 12 Czech company CEOs who were looking to do reconstruction work in Iraq on oil fields and refineries that 3 of these companies had originally built back in the 1980s. Who better to do the reconstruction work that was so badly needed? I came back from there, and the next week I entertained none other than Mr. Bill Gates, who was in Prague to do some consulting work with the Czech government. And I hosted him for breakfast in the residence with 20 members of the government of the Czech Republic and cabinet ministers. Now you think, well, what else are you going to do the rest of the 7 months? I said, well, it went downhill from there. But our service has been so exciting for us. This country, prior to the Second World War, this country, about the size of South Carolina, back then, Czechoslovakia, heart of Europe, surrounded by Poland, Austria, Germany, had the 9th largest economy in the world. They were the economic engine of Europe. They had world-class industries. They had a world-class culture. And it all came tumbling down in 1939 when Nazi Germany and Hitler ran across Europe, beginning with Austria and Czechoslovakia. The rest of the story is I'm going to quickly bring you up to 1989. But there were 41 years between 1948, after the end of the Second World War, and 1989, when the name of the country then was Czechoslovakia, was under the thumb of the Soviet Union. And the communists who ran Czechoslovakia for this period of time intermittently did some very, very horrible things to that country and its citizens, from imprisonment of tens of thousands of Czechoslovaks in concentration camps, to taking away all private business and ownership, human humiliation, torture, deaths, and so forth. But in 1989, the world turned around for a number of these Soviet bloc countries. The wall came down, and Czechoslovakia had what they called the Velvet Revolution. The Velvet Revolution was called Velvet because the communist leaders in Czechoslovakia left without a shot being fired, because there were thousands and thousands and thousands of students, people in the streets, and they saw that their time had come to an end. What's happened in that great small country since 1989? Democracy, freedom, democratic government, market economy, freedom to go as you will, do what you want to do. It hasn't been all that easy, but they are making tremendous and have made tremendous strides in bringing their economy back to where it once was. 3 to 4% average GDP growth over the past 3 to 4 years. That might not be good enough to attract David Bronner, but give us a shot at whatever might come along, David. But companies, American businesses, we in the United States are the third largest investor in the Czech Republic. Companies such as Microsoft, Honeywell, IBM, TRW, Ingersoll Rand, Illinois Tool Works are all being very successful in that country that had such a tough time for 41 years. On a recent industry recruiting trip to Europe, I asked Governor Riley if he and Neil Wade and Ted Von Cannon would make a pit stop in Prague in the Czech Republic and let us share with them what was going on in that country with regards to its economy, with regards to its economic potential. And we gave them, from the U.S. Embassy's perspective, from our commercial division and our economic division, how we thought the Czech Republic might look to Alabama businesses. Now, Governor Riley, I don't want to move any Alabama jobs to the Czech Republic. Please understand that. But you know, there are ways to expand employment in Alabama by exporting and by opening up new opportunities for Alabama companies in Central Europe. And that's what we talked about, and that's what I hope we can do. I shared with him a trade mission from the state of Minnesota just last month, led by Governor Tim Pawlenty, who Governor Riley knows very well. He brought over 20 chief executive officers and left after a week of talking with different Czech companies, with about 3 or 4 partnerships already established between these Minnesota companies and Czech companies. So I think the opportunity is there. Governor Riley, I'm going to say to you, like you said to the people of Alabama during your campaign, you said Alabama was open for business. I'm going to share with you and the rest of these Alabama folks, Czech Republic is open for business for Alabama companies. Please take advantage of us. Thank you all very much.
That concludes this meeting.
Yes. It's actually my first trip back to Alabama. I've been to New York and New Jersey on trade missions. Oh.
We weren't going to take it till you came. It looks like we're going to.
Folks act like you're having a good time.
We are,
This is
but
a
you're
big
here.
deal. Always.
right, what's all that? Act like we're happy. Looking right in his cereal.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. One of our state's living treasures is Catherine Tucker Wyndham. She was born and brought up in Clark County, Alabama, in Thomasville. She's a graduate of Huntingdon College, has received honorary degrees and awards from all over the country. Her first career was in journalism. Now work on the state city dailies. She made it possible for women journalists in Alabama to be more than society reporters and more than gossip columnists. You want louder? I'm old.
Well, so am I.
Well, be my guest.
No, you're doing good.
Is that better? Did you hear that Catherine had a long career in journalism? You're next. She settled in Selma, Alabama, with her husband, Amasa Wyndham, and there they had their children. And Catherine worked for the Selma Times-Journal. Her career in journalism was of the sort that gives the profession a good name. In her second career, this multi-talented lady has wielded a free lance with such success that she has 24 volumes to her credit. That's 24 to 1, Catherine. Which some of them are the envy of all of us who write, because some of them will be in print forever. Ghosts live forever. Catherine is a master ghost story writer, on the par with Montague Rhodes James and E.F. Benson. P.G. Woodhouse once said of one of his characters, he has an eye that can open an oyster at 60 paces. I think he could have included Catherine, because she has used that eye to produce a collection of museum-quality photographs of small-town and rural Alabama. You may think such photographs are run-of-the-mill. Anybody can go out and take a picture of one's hometown or something like that. But let me tell you, when your grandchildren's grandchildren ask you, what was a small town? When they ask their parents, what was a small town? And did cows and chickens and pigs really live outdoors in those days? Catherine's work will be all the testimony they need. They're fantastic pictures. Her talent as a photographer is something. Let's see now, what else? Whoa, I'm not ready for you yet, Catherine. As you can see, I bear witness to this fact, most writers are not public speakers, but Catherine's talent as a speaker is legendary. She has performed signal service to this state by her broadcasts on National Public Radio. As Alistair Cooke explained the ways of Americans to the British, Catherine has explained the ways of Alabama to the rest of the nation, and in doing so, has never said an unkind or an untrue word about us. She has taken that great talent for speaking and turned an oral tradition of Alabamians into an art, which is the art of telling stories. She has taken the front porch, sit in the swing on a moonrise of an evening, and stories are told, and has made it her very own oeuvre. So it gives me the greatest of pleasure to be able to demonstrate what I say to you by saying, Catherine, come tell us a story.
Thank you, Harper, and thank you for coming. I think if I'd been eating in that other place, I'd just gone on home after I'd eaten lunch. I wouldn't come on back over here. Harper made me wish I had brought my pictures with me. I wish you had known my father. If I know anything about Alabama or about small town living or about storytelling, I learned it from my father. He was a remarkable man. He was born in 1866, the year after the war between the states ended. He was the oldest of 9 sons, born to a poor dirt farmer in Marengo County, Alabama. Growing up in those difficult Reconstruction days, he had very little opportunity of education. He went to school 3 months in his whole life, but he learned to read. He said if you can read, you can learn anything in the world you need to know. And despite that lack of education, formal education, he grew up to be president of the bank and chairman of the county school board and superintendent of the Sunday school and master of the lodge and the great storyteller. And he taught me so much. He taught me that it's easier to get forgiveness than permission. Now, he didn't tell me that till I was older, but he did tell me that. He also taught me that you can't run with dogs without getting fleas. He also said that things are not important in this world. It's people who are important. And I think maybe his greatest lesson that he gave me came to me one afternoon, one noontime. I must have been 7 or 8 years old. And he took me out into the country with him to visit a farmer who had some business with a bank. My father went into the house, and I stayed out in the yard to play one of those hard, sandy, well-swept country yards. There was an old tire swing hanging from a frayed rope from an oak tree limb there, and I enjoyed swinging in that swing. And after a while, my father came out on the porch and he said, "Catherine, come on in. They've invited us to dinner." Using the proper word for that noonday meal. I don't know how we got confused about dinner and supper. Dinner is at 12 o'clock. Well, we went in, and I had never seen such poverty before. The house was almost bare of any furniture. There were no pictures on the wall, no books anywhere, nothing of beauty. We ate in the kitchen on a bare kitchen table that had long benches down each side. The father went to the back porch and hallooed, and the 3 sons came in from the field, stopped on the back porch to wash their face and hands in the enamel pan there, left their shoes on the back porch and came in to eat. We didn't have very much variety, but we had peas, cornbread, a simple fare, served on metal dishes, and there was one implement apiece, as I recall. And the flies were coming in from everywhere, those unscreened windows and the open doors. My father kept looking at me and nodding his head, saying, "Eat, eat." And I did. And as soon as we left and got back in the car, my father said to me, "I want you to remember one thing. We had dinner today with some good people. And you are not one bit better than they are. You are just used to better things." And I look out at this group today, and we're all used to better things. God has blessed us all so richly, and I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed that we have not used those blessings that God has given us to do more to improve the welfare of our fellow Alabama citizens. I'm ashamed that we are insensitive to the growing number of criminals in our state and the treatment of those criminals. Insensitive to our overcrowded jails and prisons. We do so little to correct the reasons, the twin reasons for criminal activities: poverty and lack of education. And we watch as the state builds new prisons, investing money that should go to schools and libraries and museums and the arts. And we wonder. And I'm embarrassed, and I think of, the fact that we permit greedy developers to pollute our streams, rape our woodlands, even destroy the very air that we breathe. It bothers me. And our housing projects, our public housing projects, we watch idly as they fall into more and more decay and become the habitat for drug dealers and gang warfare. And so many thousands of our Alabama citizens lack decent housing of any kind. They live in places that we kind of shut our eyes and look the other way as we drive by. Shacks that have no water, no sewerage, no electricity. Where the heat of the summer invades those shabby rooms, and the roofs leak, and in the winter the wind howls through those cracks in the walls. And then there are the other thousands of Alabamians who have no homes at all. No homes at all. And oh, how blessed we are. And I think of us with our health insurance, our stock portfolios, and all of our Alabama citizens who lack any health insurance, who lack access to medical facilities, who, if they could get to those facilities, would have no money to pay and cannot even now buy the prescription drugs that they need or the over-the-counter medications. And I think of the long lawsuits that we permit to go on and on and on, the lawsuits against this state that cost us millions of dollars in legal fees and court cost, dollars that should be spent in education and health care, recreation aimed at our communities. And so many of those lawsuits were not even necessary if we had done what was right to begin with. And I think about how we have failed our public schools. Somehow it doesn't seem to bother us anymore that students in Alabama fail to meet even the lowest minimum of the state and the nation's qualifications on test scores. Fail to meet the lowest minimum. And our youngsters are not dumb. There's something wrong, very wrong. Wrong when thousands of our adults, most of them high school graduates, cannot fill out a simple job application form, cannot follow written instructions for simple tasks. There's something wrong. Our public schools, we have failed them. And then there's the costly studies. Now this really concerns me. We bring in experts from other areas. We study. We bring in costly consultants to tell us what we already know. We know what's wrong. We know, many of us, or some of us, experts in this room, we know what should be done, but we fail to do it. We fail to do it. And I think of our tax structure, our archaic tax structure. Some of our largest landholders pay almost no taxes on their wealthy property. And we even create legal loopholes so that some companies and corporations pay no taxes at all. And the heaviest burden of our taxes, our sales taxes, fall on those who at least afford it. The poor, cleaning out their pockets of what little money they do have. Now I'm going to digress a minute here, and that's what Southern storytellers do. I am a yellow dog Democrat, but I want to praise our Republican governor, Governor Riley, who proposed a measure that would have lifted Alabama from the bottom and put us on the road to progress and made us a leader and had given us pride again. His Amendment 1. Didn't know it was possible to admire a Republican as much as I admire him. He had a vision. He worked hard. He was dedicated. He knew what this state needed. And furthermore, he had the guts to stand up for what he believed. Went all over this state trying to get that amendment passed. And it failed. And we failed. And it still hurts. It still hurts. As I approach my 87th birthday, I think of the long list I have of my failures, of things I meant to do and never gotten around to doing. The list is so long, so long. So many problems and so little time. But I look out at this gathering, younger people with years before you, this gathering of Alabama's finest, the leaders, the state, the influential people of this state. And I am hopeful I know that Alabama will rise with your leadership, your devotion. You love Alabama. We all do. This state of ours embraces us with her beauty. Those rugged mountains, the sandy beaches, the rolling prairies, the pine forest, the pasture lands, the streams that bear those Indian names. Oh, how much we have been blessed. And He continues to bless us, God does. And He expects us to use those blessings, to use them to benefit His other children, those who have not had the good things that we have had. And we will do it. We will do it. We will sing our songs, tell our stories, enjoy the fellowship of fellow Alabamians. We will encourage the people who need the encouragement. We will stand up for what we know is right. We will quit being ashamed of Alabama. There's no reason that we should continue to be ashamed. So much remains to be done. And so much is possible from the very people in this room with your leadership, your dedication, and your sure remembrance that God loves us all, that He will guide us, that we can accomplish what needs to be accomplished in this state of ours, this state of Alabama. God bless us all.
Well, thank you. That was just wonderful. Thank you, Nell. Thank all of you for being here, and we'll be here next year.